When Jeannie Seely passed away on August 1st, 2025, the world lost Miss Country Soul. Fans remembered the voice, the miniskirts, the 5,000-plus Opry appearances. But what most didn't know was that, behind the music, Jeannie had been keeping a private archive, one that would remain sealed until her final curtain call. In the days after her memorial at the Grand Ole Opry house, the doors to her Nashville home were quietly opened. Inside, amid the familiar warmth of her living room and the shelves lined with photographs, there were things no one expected to see. A Grammy, still gleaming from 1966. Stage costumes that had scandalized and inspired in equal measure. Handwritten lyrics to songs the public had never heard. Letters so personal, they revealed a side of Jeannie Seely her fans never knew. And then, there was the small locked box on her bedroom dresser. No one would say what was inside. For decades, these treasures stayed hidden, wrapped in the life of a woman who never stopped making history. Today, we'll take you inside Jeannie Seely's story, and inside the estate she left behind to uncover what those closest to her found when the music finally stopped. Jeannie Seely's story began on July 6, 1940, in the small town of Titusville, Pennsylvania. It was a working-class community, surrounded by rolling hills and farmland, where hard work wasn't just expected, it was a way of life. Her parents, Leo and Irene, raised Jeannie and her siblings with a strong sense of discipline. But they also nurtured her love for music. That love was planted early, thanks to the family's radio, which every Saturday night carried the unmistakable sound of the Grand Ole Opry into their home. At just 11 years old, she stepped in front of a microphone for the first time on local radio. The nerves were there, but so was the spark. Something about performing in front of an audience, even one she couldn't see, lit a fire in her. By her teens, she was appearing on local television shows, the bright lights of the studio reflecting off her determination as much as her smile. In those years, she began developing the vocal style that would one day earn her the nickname Miss Country Soul. It wasn't just about hitting the notes, it was about feeling them. Her voice carried a mix of warmth and grit, the kind of tone that made joy sound brighter and heartbreak feel sharper. After high school, the pull of bigger dreams took her west. She moved to California in the early 1960s, supporting herself with office jobs while performing at night. She worked as a secretary at Liberty Records by day, filing paperwork and typing memos for other people's careers, while quietly hoping hers was just around the corner. On the weekends, she sang wherever she could, honing her craft in small clubs and coffee houses. It was in California that fate introduced her to songwriter Hank Cochran. Their creative chemistry was instant, and Hank would soon write the song that changed her life, "Don't Touch Me." When she recorded it in 1966, something extraordinary happened. The single soared to number 2 on the country charts, her voice pouring out of radios across America. The song's emotional pull and her unique delivery earned her the Grammy Award for Best Female Country Vocal Performance, placing her among the most respected voices in Nashville. That same year, she moved to Music City. Nashville was a different world, traditional, male-dominated, and sometimes hesitant to embrace newcomers. But Jeannie arrived with momentum and something to prove. It wasn't long before the Grand Ole Opry invited her to perform. In 1967, she became a full member. For Jeannie, it was more than just a professional milestone. It was the fulfillment of the dream she'd carried since those Saturday nights in Titusville. From the moment she first stepped onto that famous stage, she began collecting mementos, ticket stubs, show programs, photographs with fellow artists. At the time, no one thought much of it. But looking back, those early keepsakes became the first pieces of the private collection that would one day form part of her estate. Even in her earliest Opry days, she stood out. Her style, both musically and in how she presented herself, set her apart. She was unafraid to blend country storytelling with a soulful delivery that pushed genre boundaries. And behind the scenes, she was quietly defying expectations, saving every scrap of her journey. Perhaps knowing one day those items would tell the story better than words ever could. In the years to come, the world would come to know Jeannie Seely as an Opry mainstay and a voice of her generation. But those who knew her well understood that she was also an archivist of her own life, guarding her personal history with the same care she gave to her music. It's why decades later, when her estate was finally opened, some of the most touching discoveries were the ones from these very beginnings. The fragile photographs, the handwritten set lists, and the yellowed newspaper clippings from a Pennsylvania girl who dared to dream her way to Nashville. By the time Jeannie Seely was inducted into the Grand Ole Opry in 1967, she had already made her mark with Don't Touch Me and her Grammy win. But becoming an official member wasn't just an honor, it was an opportunity to shape the institution from within. And Jeannie didn't walk through those backstage doors planning to blend in. The Opry was steeped in tradition, and for decades, its stage had reflected the conservative side of country music. Men in suits, women in modest dresses. Jeannie respected the history, but she also believed the music and the people who performed it could be modern, relevant, and bold. Her first real stir came the night she stepped onto the Opry stage wearing a miniskirt. The audience gasped. The photographers clicked. The whispers spread quickly backstage. Did you see what Seely wore? It was more than a fashion choice, it was a statement. She followed that with go-go boots, pantsuits, and eventually jeans, attire that was virtually unheard of for a woman on the Opry stage. Some traditionalists frowned. Younger fans cheered. And in doing so, Jeannie cracked the door open for women in country music to present themselves on their own terms. Her confidence and charisma soon landed her another first. She became the first woman to regularly host segments of the Grand Ole Opry broadcast. It was a role traditionally reserved for men, but Jeannie handled it with an easy wit and a command of the stage that won over even the skeptics. She kept the energy up, teased her fellow performers, and never let the spotlight intimidate her. During these years, she also began building her signature connection with audiences. Unlike many stars who maintained a certain distance, Jeannie spoke to fans as if they were friends. She signed every autograph, took time to listen, and often remembered names and faces years later. It was a quality that would make her beloved by generations of country music lovers. Behind the scenes, she was quietly adding to her growing archive. Wardrobe pieces from these years' miniskirts that caused a stir, boots worn during milestone performances, jackets from television appearances were all carefully stored. Playbills from the nights she hosted, photographs with legends like Loretta Lynn and Porter Wagoner, and even her handwritten show scripts from Opry broadcasts were tucked away in drawers and garment bags. Some of these items, decades later, would be found exactly as she left them. Outfits still carrying the scent of stage makeup, programs with her quick notes scribbled in the margins, and Polaroids that captured candid backstage moments. To fans who would eventually see them, these weren't just relics of her career. They were living snapshots of a woman rewriting the rules in real time. The late 1960s and early 70s also saw Jeannie expanding her collaborations. She partnered with Jack Green for a string of duet hits, including Wish I Didn't Have to Miss You. The chemistry between them both on stage and in the studio was undeniable, and their touring schedule was relentless. Together, they played to packed houses, their harmonies blending into something greater than the sum of their parts. Even while living life in the fast lane, Jeannie maintained her role as an Opry staple. It wasn't unusual for her to perform on the road one night and be back in Nashville the next to take the stage at the Ryman. She considered the Opry her musical home, and the collection of mementos she was building from this period reflected just how deeply it mattered to her. These were the years when Jeannie Seely went from being a Grammy-winning newcomer to a cultural force at the Grand Ole Opry. She wasn't just singing songs, she was shifting the perception of what a woman could be in country music. And the proof of that transformation wouldn't just live in the memories of her fans. It would live in the closets, drawers, and photo albums of her home, waiting to be discovered when the music finally fell silent. While Jeannie Seely's voice was the first thing most fans fell in love with, her pen was just as powerful. By the early 1970s, she had firmly established herself as more than a performer. She was a songwriter whose work carried emotional weight and commercial success. Artists like Merle Haggard, Willie Nelson, Dottie West, Ernest Tubb, and Connie Smith recorded her songs. Each lyric carried Seely's signature blend of plain-spoken honesty and melodic grace. She once said that writing was a way to work through the things you can't say out loud, and the songs she crafted often revealed truths that couldn't always be spoken in interviews or on stage. Some were autobiographical, others purely imaginative, but all came from the same place: a deep understanding of human emotion. Her collaborations extended beyond songwriting credits. On stage, she became known for her duets with Jack Green. Records like Can I Sleep in Your Arms and Much Oblige found an eager audience, further cementing her as a staple of country music in the 1972nd. But the road wasn't always easy. Touring meant long stretches away from home, missed family events, and the constant pressure to deliver hit after hit. It was during these years that Seely's personal life saw its own set of highs and lows. Her first marriage to songwriter Hank Cochran had brought her both artistic partnership and emotional strain. Their creative connection was undeniable. Hank wrote, "Don't touch me, after all." But the pressures of two demanding careers eventually wore on the relationship. They divorced, yet maintained mutual respect as professionals. In the music industry, the late 70s and early 80s were a period of change. Country music's sound was shifting, incorporating more pop influences. For some artists, the new trends left them on the sidelines. Jeannie, however, adapted, continuing to perform, write, and appear on the Opry stage, even when radio play wasn't as strong as in her peak chart years. What no one outside her close circle knew was that, during these decades, Jeannie was also quietly preserving the artifacts of her journey. In her home office sat a desk drawer where she kept a stack of spiral notebooks filled with song lyrics, many unpublished. Some were nearly complete, with chord notations in the margins. Others were fragments, a single verse, a chorus without a home, a line scribbled on the back of an envelope. When her estate was opened in 2025, those notebooks were among the most surprising finds. Fans had known her as a songwriter, but the sheer volume of unrecorded material revealed just how prolific she had been. Tucked between the pages were also personal letters, some from fellow artists, some from fans who had poured out their hearts in ink, telling her how a song had changed their lives. In another corner of her home, a small filing cabinet held manila folders labeled with names Merle, Willie, Dottie. Inside were handwritten correspondence, photos from recording sessions, and contracts for songs she had sold or co-written. The cabinet was like a time capsule of Nashville's golden era, preserved by someone who knew its value long before the rest of the world would. Of all the pieces from this period, one in particular stood out: a cassette tape labeled simply Kitchen Demos. On it, Jeannie's voice, unpolished, intimate, floated over the strum of an acoustic guitar. These were work tapes, never meant for release, capturing her creativity in its purest form. For fans and historians, it was as if the walls of her home had been holding onto a secret concert for decades. The 1970s and 80s were a test of endurance for Jeannie Seely, artistically, personally, and professionally. Yet, Through every challenge, she kept writing, kept performing, and kept quietly safeguarding the tangible pieces of her story. Decades later, those pieces would become some of the most revealing parts of her estate, offering an unfiltered look at the artist behind the stage lights. By the time Jeannie Seely entered her 80s, she had nothing left to prove. She was already the most frequent performer in Grand Ole Opry history, a Grammy winner, a songwriter whose work had been recorded by legends, and a mentor to countless younger artists. Yet, she remained as active as ever, hosting Willie's Roadhouse on Sirius XM, performing regularly at the Opry, and releasing new music. Her personal life was anchored by her marriage to Nashville attorney Gene Ward. The two had a deep bond that went beyond the public eye, quiet evenings at home, time spent with family, and a shared love for their cat, Corey. But in late 2024, Gene passed away, leaving Jeannie without her closest companion. Friends say she threw herself even more into her music in the months that followed, determined to keep going. Still, her health was becoming harder to ignore. Back surgeries, abdominal operations, and long hospital stays took their toll. In the spring of 2025, she battled pneumonia and spent time in the ICU. Yet, when she returned to the Opry stage, she did it with the same spark and quick wit that had defined her for decades. Her final public appearance came just weeks before her death on August 1st, 2025. At 85, she left this world with her legacy intact. But for those who knew her best, there was one more chapter left to tell. Within days of her memorial service, dubbed her 5,398th Opry performance, the doors to her Nashville home were opened. Inside, friends and family began the careful process of sorting through a lifetime's worth of belongings. It was here that the scope of Jeannie's private collection came into focus. In her living room, atop a glass cabinet, sat the Grammy she'd won in 1966. It looked almost untouched, its gold surface catching the morning light exactly as it must have on the day she received it. Nearby, garment racks held stage costumes from across 6 decades. The infamous miniskirts that once stirred headlines, sequined gowns from televised specials, and the denim jackets she wore in later years. Her home office revealed a different side of the collection. Framed photographs of her with Opry colleagues lined the walls, but it was the drawers and cabinets that told the real story. Here were the handwritten lyric notebooks, meticulously organized, many with dates and small personal notes in the margins. Letters from Hank Cochran, some tender, some purely business, were bundled with ribbon. Folders, labeled with the names of fellow performers, contained candid photos, tour itineraries, and recording session notes. Then there were the more personal treasures. Her first Opry membership card, a stack of old playbills with her name in bold print, and a well-worn leather-bound journal filled with reflections from life on the road. On a small bookshelf, fans found a collection of cookbooks, many with handwritten recipes slipped inside evidence of the home life she rarely discussed publicly. And in her bedroom, resting on the dresser, sat the most talked-about item of all, a small, locked box. Its key was not in sight, and its contents have not been publicly disclosed. Friends and family have remained tight-lipped, fueling speculation among fans. Was it a bundle of love letters, financial documents, a final, unreleased song? Only those closest to her know, and they aren't saying. What's clear is that Jeannie Seely didn't just live her life, she documented it. Every costume, every set list, every photograph was a thread in the larger tapestry of her career. And when her estate was finally opened, it revealed not just a star's possessions, but a woman's life in full color, carefully preserved for a moment like this. In the days following Jeannie Seely's passing, one question lingered among fans and industry insiders: what happens now to everything she left behind? While Jeannie's will has not been made public, those close to her describe it as meticulously organized, reflecting the same care she took in managing her career. Unlike many celebrity estates, there has been no public sign of dispute. Friends say that Jeannie was determined to prevent the kind of family battles that often overshadow a legacy. She had no biological children, but she had a close relationship with her stepchildren and their families, and they are believed to be among the primary beneficiaries. Beyond that, there's strong speculation that a significant portion of her collection will eventually find its way into public archives, ensuring that her history remains accessible to the fans who supported her for nearly 60 years. The Country Music Hall of Fame Museum, the Grand Ole Opry archives, and even the Smithsonian have been mentioned in conversations about where her most iconic pieces might go. Items like the 1966 Grammy, her first Opry membership card, and the original lyric sheets for "Don't Touch Me" are obvious candidates for museum display. These aren't just objects, they're tangible symbols of how a Pennsylvania girl reshaped Nashville's stage and style. But not everything is destined for glass cases and museum plaques. Friends believe that certain personal items and her leather-bound journal, handwritten recipes, private correspondence will remain in the family. They're the kinds of keepsakes that carry emotional weight beyond their historical value. They speak not to Jeannie Seely, the Opry legend, but to Jeannie, the wife, the friend, the woman who loved to cook, laugh, and tell stories around a kitchen table. And then there's the locked box. Whatever its contents, its secrecy has already become part of her posthumous lore. Some believe it contains unfinished songs, potentially her last creative works. Others think it may hold personal letters she wanted kept private forever. Whatever the truth, its mystery has ensured that the conversation about her life and what she chose to share will continue for years. Her legacy, however, isn't just in the items she left behind. It's in the way she expanded the boundaries of what a woman could be in country music. She challenged outdated dress codes, hosted Opry segments with authority and charm, and wrote songs that stood alongside those of the biggest names in the business. She remained active well into her 80s, proving that longevity in entertainment is possible when talent and determination are backed by authenticity. In the weeks after her death, tributes poured in from across the industry. Dolly Parton called her a force of nature with a heart of gold. Opry performers, young and old, shared stories of her kindness backstage, how she made newcomers feel welcome, offered advice without condescension, and carried herself with the quiet confidence of someone who had earned her place at the table. Jeannie Seely's estate is more than a collection of memorabilia. It's a roadmap of a career built on talent, resilience, and a refusal to conform. Whether displayed in museums, passed down to family, or locked away forever, the contents tell a story that can't be replicated. They remind us that the real treasures left behind by artists aren't just the awards or costumes. They're the moments, the risks, and the choices that made their lives worth remembering. And for the fans who followed her journey from Titusville to the Opry stage, knowing that her legacy will be preserved both in public spaces and in the hearts of those who knew her, is perhaps the most meaningful discovery of all. Jeannie Seely's legacy isn't just in the music she made or the records she broke. It's in the way she carried herself, the barriers she shattered, and the generosity she showed to those who shared her stage. Her estate offers us a final, intimate encore, one that reminds us that behind every song, every performance, is a life filled with moments worth holding on to. For more emotional stories, check out this video.